Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 45, brought to you by the world's leading magazine of martial arts, the legendary Black Belt Magazine. And I could not be more excited for today's episode. I know it seems like I say that every single episode, but trust me, I'm telling the truth on this one because we have the legendary coach of Team Paul Mitchell, Don Rodrigues, as well as his wife, a legendary competitor and extremely influential figure in martial arts, Christine Bannon-Rodrigues, on the show today. And it's an honor to have them both here together. We're going to get into some awesome topics, some really cool stories about sport karate and martial arts history in general. But first, I'll allow both of you to introduce yourselves a little bit more. Thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate being here. Thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you, Jackson. Very excited to be here.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. So yeah, just tell our audience a little bit more about yourselves and maybe take us all the way back to the beginning. How did each of you get involved in the martial arts in the first place?
Well, who's going first?
You go first.
Okay.
You got involved first.
Well, first of all, I'm Don. That should be enough right there. Yeah, I started karate when I was 12 years old, and back in 1967, when you was 12 years old, there was no other 12-year-olds around, if you know what I mean. I was the youngest kid in the school. The next youngest person was 15, and everyone else was adults after that. So my entire career was basically with adults all the time. They never had junior divisions. When I was competing, I competed as an adult at 13 years old, right from the beginning, And I was brought up at a different time, a hardcore time. I always said that my instructors back then would be in prison today if they were in the schools like that today, But you know what? Going through it and everything, I wouldn't want it any different. It was quite a thing to go through. So you can imagine what I saw back then, and that escalated to what it is today. You know what I mean? So when you're seeing an evolution of the sport, an evolution of the martial arts, it's quite rewarding, and that's why Kevin Thompson, who was so influential to all of us on the team, and one of my dearest friends of all time ever, he always urged me, Coach, gotta write a book, gotta write a book, gotta write a book, gotta write books, not just a book, So at some point, sometime in the near future, I'm planning on it, but I got so many different topics that I can do, you know what I mean? Back in the day when it first started, compared to, listen, I was a green belt when Fred Villari actually started karate with us back in 1968, And so that's how far back I remember me working with him as a white belt, Now, you know what? These are things that, being with Ed Parker and all these other tremendous guys, getting to meet Chuck Norris and being good friends with him and so forth and helping his causes. It's been a great thing. And of course, I've been running the Ocean State for over 40 years. And, and then back in 1980, I had this young girl come in with another friend of hers to start taking karate from me, which was Christine, you know what I mean? And then that's how this thing started, and she became one of my best students at that time. And then we got to grow into a relationship after that, So it's been a good relationship, a great relationship, an extraordinary one. And I believe 8 days, it'll be 30 years that we've been married. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so thank you. So she's been able to put up with me for over 30 years being married, And I don't think we actually couldn't get married right away because there were so many tournaments that we had to go to every year.
You kept postponing it all the time.
All the time. So it took us 7 years before we decided to get married, you know what I mean? But so we've been together for a long time, Jackson, and you know what? What's so great about our team that we have here is that when we were going, I always took the promoter's outlook of how the sport should, and she took the competitor's outlook. You know what I mean? And you mix them both together and you come up with a pretty good thing. But I'm going to let her talk now because I'll talk forever.
So I started martial arts when I was 13. Just did it as another after-school activity with a girlfriend. He was teaching privately. We never had a commercial school way back then, and girlfriend's brother was training with him, so she asked me if I wanted to try it out, and I did it just like I did figure skating and softball and basketball and gymnastics, and every sport that there was I tried. And I just figured, okay, it's just another thing I'm going to try. And I enjoyed the other sports, but when I started karate, I really took to it. I really liked it, and my girlfriend ended up quitting within a year probably, and I just stayed with it and loved it. And it was very male dominant, and older people. There were some, but I don't know. I just loved it, and I've really seen the martial arts in general transform over the years, and especially competition. My first story of competition was competing as an orange belt at the Ocean State the first year that we ran it, and back then I could compete in the junior division or I could compete in the women's. It didn't matter, even though I was 13. So I competed in the juniors with the boys for forms, but then when it came to fighting, some 13-year-old boys, 14-year-old boys are pretty big, so I fought in the women's division, and it was all belts. So I fought Larry Kelly's wife, who was a black belt at the time. Was my first fight there in the I lost to her in the women's division, so that's my first competition story.
Well, absolutely no shame in that, losing to a black belt as a 13-year-old underbelt. There's definitely no shame in that. But I do want to go ahead and kind of continue down this journey of yours, especially as a competitor, because you competed in the era in which it was common to do everything, right? Forms, weapons, fighting, and you in particular were very good at all of those things, right? So just kind of take us back, take a trip down memory lane. Any favorite highlights of your career or favorite memories from your competitive days that you want to share?
Well, I mean, back then it was always like, a lot less divisions than we have now. And in the weapons, I competed with the men all the time. So, Terry Kramer, I used to compete with him, and Keith Hirabayashi and Ho-Sung Park, and, all those guys in the soft style division. And when we'd go for grands, whether it was a forms grand or weapons grand, it was against the men. So I had to deal with John Fournette and, just great competitors, Rich Brandon, so that part was, sticks out in my head compared to the way it is now, with everyone. But it's great that it's like that now, because it means we're getting more women, we're getting more kids, and, so that's why the divisions are divided the way they are now. Back then, there were very few. So, but as far as memorable moments, I would say, I wanted to be number one in all three because no one really was doing that. And I set my goal back when Black Belt or Karate Illustrated did the ratings. And I wanted to be number one in Region 12, which is New England, in forms, fighting, and weapons. And, after achieving that, I went on to wanting to be a national champion in all three. And after that, I wanted to go and achieve it at the World Championships, and then moved on to competing at the WACO Worlds 3 different times. And, I would say my most memorable experience was being able to win 3 gold medals in all 3 events. And I did that the second time. That was my goal after I went to my first Worlds in 90 in Venice, Italy. And so I went back to England and won all 3 golds. And, everyone was like, that's kind of a fluke thing. It'll never happen again. And so then it got me mad. I wanted to go back and do it again. So I did. So, that was, and of course, fighting was the last one that I was going for. And it was like a real close match. And we're like in, almost overtime. And it was a nail biter, to get that 3rd gold, and, really worked hard for it. And, I would probably say that was one of my most memorable experiences.
That's really cool. And just to put that into perspective for our viewers that may not be familiar with the WACO World Championships and things like that, especially in that era, that was the world title to win. And for all three divisions, right? I know a lot of times in modern competition, WACO is seen predominantly as kind of the point fighting league, whereas NASCA, ISKA are more of the forms and weapons, although we have great fighters there as well. But back then, I mean, all the best competitors competed at the WACO World Championships in all disciplines. And so the fact that you were able to three-peat at the WACO Championships multiple times, Michael Jordan style, is extremely impressive. So that's just one thing that I wanted to kind of put into perspective for our viewers. And now kind of staying on this theme of competition, now we're going to shift to you, Coach. And by the way, for our viewers, you'll hear me refer to Coach John Rodriguez as just Coach throughout the entire episode, because if you're on Paul Mitchell, that is the only thing that you know Coach as. He's just King. Right? But anyway, so Coach, you were there when everything started with Paul Mitchell, and it would grow to become arguably the greatest team of all time. You know that, in my opinion, it's the greatest team of all time, right? So just take us. We've heard on the podcast, we've heard Steve Babcock's perspective, we've heard Chris Rappold and so many others, but now it's your turn. Take us all the way back to the very beginning. Tell us the origin story of Team Paul Mitchell.
Okay, thank you so much, Jackson, for that. You know what? The thing is that we had a team. I had a team. It was called Spider Brand. Okay, we formed a team here, a local team from New England. Good fighters. I mean, very good. And Steve was part of that, of course. Pedro and Cheech Luzzy and David Collins, and we had a bunch of local competitors. You know what I mean? And Spider Brand was a company that used to make bags and used to make heavy bags and mats and things like that there and so forth. So what we did was, for us to get sponsorship, I would have them, if a promoter, we go to a tournament, and then if a promoter wanted like bags or mats and stuff, we used to get an order from Spider Brand, and Spider Brand would give them, and that would be our entry fee. So we'd end up entering the tournament for free, and that's how our team started, Well, there were some tournaments that we went to that he didn't make big stuff for these people. And my guys were waiting outside to get in. And I'm saying, like, let me go to the promoter. So I went to I never forget, Rich Baptista. I said, Rich, you know me. Don't worry, you'll get the stuff. But I need to get my guys inside, So, of course, Rich let them in. And I said, you know what, we can't do this anymore. I need to get a sponsor. As much as I appreciated the guy that was doing it at the time, I wasn't going to keep doing this, you know what I mean? So what happened is we got a team meeting together, and then Steve Babcock mentioned, I know this guy, Paul Mitchell. I know the Paul Mitchell hair care company. I said, well, listen, let me write up a proposal. I said, how well do you know him? He said, Coach, I know him really good, And I said, okay. So I wrote up this proposal for it, and I gave it to Steve, and of course, Steve submitted it. And then a few weeks later, about a month later, when Steve called him back to find out if he got it, he said, I do. So he said, let me call you back in 20 minutes. John Paul looked at the stuff. He liked what he saw. He said, hey, you know what? Let's give this a shot. You know what I mean? So that's how our sponsorship started,
We were the first sport that Paul Mitchell
Right.
ever.
Paul Mitchell never got involved in any sports, so this was the first sporting team that he got involved with, So then what happened is, and this is a weird story, Jackson, 2 weeks later, after we got the sponsorship, I'm watching CNN, and I'm hearing that the Paul Mitchell guru, Paul Mitchell, died today, and I'm saying, like, are you kidding me? My sponsor died. I just got him there. so I called Steve up. I said, Steve, our sponsor just died. You know what I mean? He goes, Coach, oh, no. There's John Paul, and then there was Paul Mitchell. So I said, okay, so we're safe so far. You know what I mean? But I never even got a chance to meet Paul Mitchell himself. You know what I mean? Which I met his son, of course. But, the thing is that, that's how that whole thing started. And after the first year, we made a tape of us competing at some of the tournaments and introducing the players. And we sent it to John Paul, and he was ecstatic. you know, and the sponsorship been going on since then. And I can't tell you how much appreciation I have for John Paul coming forth at the beginning and staying with us for all these years. It's just been tremendously incredible. You know what? We're so fortunate, and it's such a tremendous fraternity that we have. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the whole team in general. You know what I mean? You guys on this team is my life. It really is. I mean, it means everything to me. Everything. Jackson, I remember the first time I saw you. Okay? Do you remember this?
If you start telling the story, I might.
You was competing as a junior in New York at Lee Ireland's tournament.
You judged me. I do remember.
And I was your judge, remember? I judged you in that division. You know what I mean? So I watched you, and I said afterwards, I said, wow, this kid is really good. So after the tournament was over, I was talking with Steve. I said, you know what? I saw somebody that's really good. I mean, his name is Jackson Rudolph. I said, we got to keep an eye on this kid because there's somebody that I got this feeling that he's going to be wearing Paul Mitchell in the future, you know? And that's how that whole thing started with me. You know what I mean? Now, I was judging back then quite a bit. You know, I would take divisions, you know, but the first time that I actually saw you compete, you know, in the juniors. So I have a pretty good memory when it comes to things, you know, and, you know, Caitlin Deschelle was about this tall when she started, you know. And you know what? It's just so fortunate to see so many great competitors come out of this team. And I'm still close to a lot of these people, very close, you know, and I feel like, you know, every time I see even yourself today, it kind of makes my day. It really does, you know. So.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing that story because you told me about it before, but it's funny because I remember, you know, there's not many forms that I remember from back when I was 11, 12 years old or whatever it was. I remember that form. And just for perspective for our audience here, he said he coached all the time back then. He really didn't. Like coaching all the time for Coach Rodrigues was like, or not coaching, sorry, judging. He said judging all the time for Coach Rodrigues was like he would sit down at, you know, a time or two because it was everybody knew that he was the coach of Paul Mitchell. And so whenever he would judge a division, everybody in the division would drop because everybody get too nervous. So everybody would drop their weapons and everybody looked terrible.
No question. They were all auditioning. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I remember before that division when I saw you sit down in the judge's chair because I was with my dad and I was like, oh my God, that's Coach Rodrigues. Coach Rodrigues. Like I was freaking out because I knew that, you know, that potentially was an audition, right? And so that was the reason that he didn't judge much is because he knew that when he sat down to judge, that made everybody nervous and nobody looked good when he would judge because everybody was too nervous to do anything, right? So that's just a little funny kind of my perspective on that one. But anyway, so we're going to talk about, you know, I'm going to give you kind of a general opportunity to talk about some of your favorite memories from the team. But I specifically want to kind of hit at one because I think that in Steve Babcock's eyes, who was on the team when everything started, right? And he said this when he was on the podcast. He talked about how kind of the moment in which Paul Mitchell knew that we were big, because Paul Mitchell started out as a regional team in the Northeast, right? And then, you know, he struck the big deal. The moment that Steve knew that we were going to be big was the nationally televised fight against Trans World Oil, five versus 5-man teams, absolutely epic fight. And back then, Trans World Oil was seen as the team to beat, and Paul Mitchell beat them on national television, right? So do your thoughts align with that? Do you think that was the moment? When did you really realize that Paul Mitchell was going to be something that was going to be around for a long time and something that had a chance to be an all-time great karate team?
Well, you know, Jackson, I felt prior to that we were getting there. You know what I mean? That we had the potential, but that was the signature one. That was the one that really did it, and it was when we're fighting a legendary team like the Atlantic team, the people they had on that team, and I'll give you an example. If you ever found the tape of that fight, they didn't even know our names. they would only say the Paul Mitchell fighter scores, but they would always say, you know, Anthony Price scored or Richard Plowden scored, or, you know, they knew all those guys' names. The only names they knew from our team was Pedro and Steve. They didn't know the other guys. So they would call them the Paul Mitchell fighters, you know what I mean? Now, Christine happened to be there that day. She was on the Atlantic team, on the other side. Okay? And of course, we're on this side, so it makes it very awkward, so to speak, you know what I mean, in some ways, you know? Now, I got it, that was the signature win. Because you got to remember now, they had, at that time, when they were fighting, Jeff Gears was fighting. They had Tony Young. They had Anthony Price, Richard Plowden, and Terry Kramer. Those were the 5 fighters. Now, it's a great fight, you know. Mm-hmm. So what happened was we went up by 5 points, and we were in the last match. You know what I mean? And the thing was that Steve got all excited and said, Coach, go ahead. I feel pretty good right now with a 5-point lead and Pedro fighting at the end, if you know what I mean. You know? And Pedro was fighting Tony Young, and it was Pedro was just on fire. He was just so psyched up, and he did some unbelievable things. But I remember him scoring a point one time, and he went by them with his hand like that. He ran by his team, and he comes by around, and I put my hand up to give him a high five, and he did a spinning hook kick and slapped my hand, you know, and the crowd went crazy, you know what I mean? And we ended up beating them 17-7. So it wasn't just a win, it was a decisive win, you know what I mean? And I got to tell you, here's my words when we got into the locker room. I said, this is a great night, man, tremendous night. I said, we had the best win that we've ever had, and it's going to be something that we'll all remember for a long time. However, this is going to cost my wife her job. They will let her go. You watch. No, Coach Ewines, I'm telling you right now that and sure enough, it wasn't that much longer after that they said it's a conflict of interest, and it's time, you know, Christine had to move on. And that's when she was devastated at the time because she loved the Atlantic team. She really did. However, she came on to the Paul Mitchell team as the first female person to ever be on our team. And she was on it a long time as the only female. And you know what? I have the most respect for Chuck Merriman and the Atlantic team. They made us who we are. You understand? We're the ones that had to work hard to beat that team. So in a lot of ways, those guys, and as you know, the guys that I've just mentioned, 4 out of those 5 guys ended up coming on to the Paul Mitchell team afterwards. You know what I mean? Right. Jeff Gears, and the only one that didn't do it, and, you know, for years and years, Tony Young was the best fighter, best lightweight fighter out there, you know? And you know what? Eventually, I think we would have put him on before he stopped fighting, but nonetheless, 4 out of those 5 guys that fought that night for an Atlantic team ended up being on the Paul Mitchell team later on. So that gives you an idea, you know?
Absolutely. And it's interesting how from generation to generation, when you do shift from one great team to the next great team, it's always the current great team that's got the target on their back, right? And you and I both know, as being Paul Mitchell, for the past 30 years, we've had, well, I haven't had a target on my back for 30 years, more like 10. But anyway, so for the existence of Paul Mitchell, since defeating Trans World Oil, the Atlantic team, the target's been on our back, right? And there's been many, many teams over the years that have tried to become the rival and become the next great team, right? And when you've got a target on your back, at times you're going to take losses because everybody's training to beat you. And so now we're going to dive into one thing that I always tell people that aren't on the team that want to one day be on the team. I always tell them the number one thing that you need to look forward to, aside from putting on the uniform, is the first meeting where you get to hear Coach tell one of his stories, because the stories that Coach tells in the Paul Mitchell meetings are unlike any other, right? And so, speaking of having the target on our back and sometimes having to take some tough losses, you always tell one story about how you might lose the match, but you never lose the fight, right? And I just wanted you to kind of just share that story with our audience and kind of, really just share that philosophy and kind of tell us where that comes from, because I think there's a specific match that relates back to, if I'm not mistaken. So go ahead and just tell us a little bit about that mindset.
Yeah, you know, Jackson, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I got to tell you that this all started when I was young, myself personally, okay? I used to go to the karate school, and I was fighting the adults all the time. So, and they were kicking the living crap out of me every night, okay? For me, when I got out of there, I said, okay, I survived. I'm still alive, okay? So, what happened one day when I was about 15 years old, I got much bigger, much stronger. And, you know, I was a different person. At 15, I weighed 225. I was deadlifting 450. I could kick people in the head, and I was, you know, so my father said to me one day, he goes, "I'm hitting you and you're not hitting them." So I said, "Well, they're hitting me first." He said, "Yeah, but if they're close enough to hit you, aren't you close enough to hit them?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you're stronger than these guys. You got to hit them hard when you hit them, you know?" That changed my life. I'll never forget the first time I went back to class. I said, "Wow, this is great." You know, they hit me, but I hit them hard, you know. So after a while, my instructor said, "Hey, you can't hit them that hard. You got to go easy." So I said, "Yes, Sensei." And all of a sudden, you come back, whack harder, you know. What did I just tell you? Didn't I tell you to go easy? Yes, Sensei. Okay, ready? Whack, whack. Finally, you know, it was, he brought my father into the office. He goes, "Listen, this kid understand English?" I tell him to go easy, and he keeps getting harder, you know. So that's what put it in my mind. Now, my philosophy was, and it still is, I said to you before, one time our team on a Friday night got murdered in team fighting. I mean, murdered. I mean, we didn't win a fight, nothing. I was really upset with them. And I had some great fighters at that time on the team. You know, Damon was a part of that. And, you know, we had Mike Pombero and all kinds of Preston Clemens, you know what I mean? A really great fighters. And we had everybody there. And I said to the forms people, I said, "Okay, I'm just having a meeting with the fighters." This was at I think it was Washington, D.C., if I'm not mistaken. And I said, "Can anybody," I pointed to somebody, I forgot who it was. I think it might have been Preston, I'm not sure, but I said, "Do you feel like you can beat anybody in the world?" And they said, "You're taking too long to answer me. I want to hear yes right away." I said, "Listen," I said, "let me give you something here, okay? Do you know I've never lost a fight in my life in sport karate? In the sport, every time I entered a competition, I never lost a fight." And they all looked at me. Said, and Damon goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "No, that's true." So Damon says to me, "So you went undefeated in the competition?" No, wait a minute. I said, "I told you I never lost a fight. I lost a lot of matches." I probably lost way more matches than I lost fights, but I never lost the fight. When they got through with the fight, I won the fight. They might have won the match, but I won the fight. It was different. And I said, what you did tonight is you lost the fight and the match. Okay, now, I don't care if you lose the match. Don't lose the fight. Jackson, the next day, not one of those guys lost. Not one. They all won their divisions. We won the grands. We won everything. Okay, they have a different mindset. They came out with a vengeance. You know what I mean? And that's the one time that I can remember that team meeting we had. And I try to install that in their minds all the time. And Damon Gilbert's a big thing. I haven't seen Damon lose a match Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen him lose a fight. He lost some matches, but I've never seen him lose a fight. You know what I mean? And you can ask Raymond Daniels that one too. You know what I mean? But you know, the thing is that I gave a little bit of insight of how I did when I was coming up. And you know what? That's one of the signature stories that we got for that. Anyways.
They ran out of time.
Oh, that ran out of time thing. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I've ever told you that one. You know, but
go ahead.
yeah. Well, you know, it's kind of like, you know what? We always take a lot of pride in how we approach a match. You know what I mean? So, you know, when we were fighting a match one time, what happened is it was in Kentucky, and I'll never forget this. It was a team fight. And what happened was, as we're fighting along, the match keeps going on, and we had this lead, and all of a sudden the lead went down to nothing. Okay, we ended up, because what happened is sometimes when people are fighting, they fight not to lose instead of to win. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I mean? And that's what was happening in this one particular match. It wasn't, we had a lead, we were trying to protect the lead, and now only one person was trying to win the match was the other guy, okay? And it just kept going on. I'm saying, like, I don't get it, you know what I mean? So finally, when they went up a point, okay, they went up a point on us, the guy throws the thing in and said, time. I said, what? Then I noticed the guy that would threw the thing in had his son on the other team. Oh boy, I gotta tell you, that did not check well with me at all, okay? So we have this guy from Karate Illustrated, it was Bill Growak, right? Bill Growak comes from Karate Illustrated, and he says to me, he says, hey, come on, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, yeah. He says, so how does it feel, the best team in the world losing? I said, hey, you little crap. I said it in a different way. I said, let me tell you something. My team never loses. We just run out of time. Put more time on that clock, and I'd show you. You know what I mean? So I said, we never lose. We just run out of time, you know, because I was really upset about the fact that he didn't know that guy was timekeeping, and his son was on the other team, you know? So now after that, we had stopwatches. Okay, so I'll never forget this shit. And we go to another one, the same situation happens, the same guy. Okay? Pedro is fighting. And all of a sudden they say, time. Jimmy Tim's got the stopwatch. Okay? Coach, it's only 1:30, it's supposed to be 2 minutes at that time. Okay? So I said, hey, we only got 1:30 on this clock. You know what? What are you going to do about it? You know? So they go, you know what? You're right. They put 30 seconds on. Pedro scored 3 more points right after that. You know what I mean? And after that, that was the end of that. You know what I mean? We always had a stopwatch with us, you know? So we learned a lesson from it, you know, the hard way, but it's an interesting thing. That was one of our stories there. Never lose, we just run out of time. So the next article that he did, he said, quote, Don Rodriguez says his team never loses, they just run out of time.
That's awesome. And I feel like so much of that embodies the spirit of Paul Mitchell. I feel like that's such an essential part, especially with you as the coach, of developing a winning culture is your perspective on losing, right? The entire idea of you don't lose, you just run out of time. You might lose the match, but you never lose the fight, right? That's a perspective on losing that I feel like so many people don't have, because losing is practically inevitable, especially in sport karate, where if you're a fighter, you're fighting multiple rounds every single tournament you go to. If you're a forms and weapons competitor, you're leaving things in the hands of the judges who are determining if you're going to win or lose, right? So losing is an inherent part of sport karate competition. But what separates the great teams from the good teams and the okay teams is that the great teams develop a winning culture that has a perspective on losing, just like you've mentioned. And I think that's something that makes Paul Mitchell so special. And what's funny is you bring up, it was funny how you mentioned Damon and the whole never lose a fight, but sometimes lose a match. He was fighting at New England Open in 2008. You mentioned Raymond as well. And when Damon fought Raymond in the finals of the 2008 New England Open, and that was like the first major point fighting fight that I ever watched. It actually might not have been the finals. It might have been the last round of the team fight, one way or the other, right? But I remember that was the first major fight that I ever watched was Damon versus Ray. And from the moment that I started doing sport karate, I wanted to be on Paul Mitchell. So obviously I was rooting for Damon, right? And Damon wound up losing that fight, but he did not he lost the match, but he did not lose the fight by any means, because you watch the fight and you see that Damon clearly had the physical upper hand, right? And that was the thing that me as a Paul Mitchell fan was sitting in the stands like, what's going on? But anyway, you know what I mean. So it's just funny that you bring that up, because that from the very first point fighting fight that I really watched, the first major one that I watched, that really made me a point fighting fan. I watch more point fights than I probably do watching forms and weapons divisions at tournaments, because I'm watching our team fights and I'm watching our fighters in their divisions and things of that nature. But anyway, so that was just a cool little side story that I saw there. Now, one more story that you tell in the team meetings often that I want to get to, and we'll move on to some other topics. But it would not be an appropriate conversation about Paul Mitchell without bringing up Kevin Thompson. And one of my favorite stories that you've ever told is you went to visit Kevin's house. He showed you, where he trains, and he showed you some of the drills that he does and everything. And he showed you this bucket of rocks on the first trip. And then on a later trip, it was no longer a bucket of rocks. Go ahead and tell that story.
Yeah. Well, Kevin was such a unique person, you know what I mean? And, Kevin, his training methods go way, way back. I mean, way back. I know because I've been there too, you know what I mean? And this bucket of rocks that he had, that he turned into to basically sand, is from him just slamming, punching to toughen up his hands, And sure enough, he had just sand in there after. With it was rocks, but now it's sand, And it's he just goes back, and it just goes to show you his toughness that he had. He wasn't just a competitor. He was an incredible martial artist. You know what I mean? I mean, a hardcore martial artist, And, in every aspect, that's why me and him got along so great, you know what I mean? And a lot of times, when he would do, I'll never forget one time when he was fighting, he won the grand. And it was 2-2, and he was actually up 2-1. The guy scored a point on him and tied the match, and I was so ticked off that he let him score on him. And finally, they went into overtime, and you know what? Kevin ended up beating the guy, and he won the grand. And everybody went nuts. Everybody's like high-fiving him and everything, He comes over to me, and I said, "We should have never been in overtime." There was no way that we should have been in overtime. He put his head down. He goes, "You're right, coach. We should have been," like that. But Kevin was just, listen, we went to Illinois, Chicago. We were at the AKAs one year. You was there. And Kevin does fighting forms and weapons, So he was in the forms grand, and they ran the lightweight division, the middleweight division, the light heavyweight division, and then they were just starting the heavyweight division. And they had already run Kevin's division for fighting. Not checking to see, very few people would be in the forms grand or weapons grand and still be able to fight, So now, I said, stop. I said, wait a minute, we still got a fighter. He's doing forms, I didn't, So what happens is Kevin goes over there, and it's a heavyweight division. I said, there's only one division. I said, yeah. I said, you know what? I think he'll go in it, And all of them are saying, no, he's a lightweight. They didn't even want to see Kevin in there, you know what I mean? So it was so funny. So what happens is Kevin is fighting Jeff Deers, I think it was. Jeff Deers, who was on our team at one point, not at that point, So what happens is Kevin's fighting him, and all of a sudden, Kevin pops him right in the nose. Whack. Of course, Kevin hits the floor. I mean, the guy hits, Jeff Gears hits the floor. You know what? It'll go away. So what happens is Jeff is holding onto his nose on the ground, and all you can hear Jeff says, he was supposed to fight lightweight. He was supposed to fight lightweight, you know. So needless to say, Kevin wins the heavyweight division, you know what I mean? As a lightweight, you know. So, you know what, that's what an extraordinary guy he was. And, you know, him and Christine made the Black Belt Hall of Fame the same year. Her as a female and him as a male. And you know what, I can't tell you how much I miss him. And what a great guy he was, a great competitor, great person, and so influential on everybody. And I know you too, Jackson, and I know you looked up to Kev a lot and dedicated a lot to him, but he was just an extraordinary guy.
Absolutely.
And that's just one of the guys on the team. You know what I mean? You take Pedro and him, at one time, they were vicious against each other. Vicious, you know? And then they became best friends. You know? And they still argued. I think that the day Kevin was passed away, they would have argued who fought. You know, Pedro would say, "Hey, you hit me 5 times." they wouldn't say stop, you know. And then Kevin said, "That's because your uncle was judging in the corner." That's how he was. But you know what? They loved each other, and you know, I just love them all. I really do.
That's awesome. And yes, an excellent tribute to Kevin Thompson. A huge inspiration for me, a huge inspiration for anybody that's touched the sport karate world at any point in their life, who passed away, for our viewers that may not know, passed away back in January after a long battle with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And, you know, the greatest all-around sport karate competitor of all time. He could win the grands in forms, weapons, and fighting, just like Coach said. Widely considered, I mean, his nickname was the Total Package, widely considered to be the GOAT of our sport. And so always important whenever we get the chance to KA Strong. This is a nickname that's the hashtag we put on all of our Paul Mitchell uniforms. Always good to dedicate a little segment of the show to him. So now, just for a few other maybe random memories that pop up, and obviously, you know, Miss Christine, you've been around for a lot of this, right? So now I'll just open the floor to both of you, maybe 2 or 3 extra just memories or good times or funny stories that from your days on the team. Christine as a member, and then Coach, obviously coaching the team.
You know, I have a lot of great memories. Competitive-wise with the team, I would probably say I really enjoyed fighting as on a team fight with the guys, you know, so, you know, being able to fight with them and bring up a lead so they could go out there and fight comfortably. And, you know, did that in Ireland, and then we did it, where was it, Detroit?
Detroit. You brought the team right back, yeah.
You know, so those were fun because it was, you know, a very not individual sport, but, you know, working together as a team, and a lot of great memories outside of competition, like doing our training camps in the Cayman Islands, and, you know, being able to, you know, years ago, and I know you had the opportunity to go there, right? But you know, years ago we would go every year, and that's where our training camp would be. So it was a lot of fun, and you know, rest in peace, Bob Daigle used to bring us over there all the time, and you know, so we had some really fun times there, and of course, being the only, you know, first female on the team, I was the only female on the team, so you know, I went from the Atlantic team of working with Billy Blanks and Nasty Anderson and Tony Young and John, you know, like all these great Richard Plowden, all these great fighters, Anthony Price. I mean, I can keep going on and on. And then I went from sparring and learning from them, and then I got on a team where I'm sparring with Pedro and Mike Conroy and Steve Babcock and Alberto Montron and Chris Rappold and all these guys, and you know, Ernest Miller was on at the time too, and just, you know, the fighting with guys like that definitely made me become the fighter that I was, because you know, I would love to have Pedro warm me up before a fight, you know, at a tournament, because, you know, his fakes and stuff and his speed, I'm like, I get out there, I'm like, girls are in slow motion after sparring with Pedro, you know, so I'm like, I would get, you know, like a huge workout ahead of time. I didn't want to get tired, you know, sparring with him, but I was like, you know, then I get in the ring and it's, you know, they can't compare to fighting with the guys that I fought with. And, you know, those are probably some of the great memories that I have, and doing different things, even, you know, at the Children's Hospital when you guys went to in Georgia there, and just things that weren't competitive, you know. We performed for John Paul in Hawaii for his top, what are they called? His top distributors and stuff out in Hawaii, and then for his big show in Las Vegas. Yeah. So those were great times, because, you know, we were able to perform for him, and, you know, it was like, you know, this is his team, and, you know, he was very proud of us, and taking us out to Hawaii and just performing outside and with the water in the background, and it was just, you know, really, really special. And they cut my hair, and at one of them.
They cut her hair so short. She walked by me, and I didn't know who it was, okay? Okay, they said an inch, but it was an inch from her scalp instead of an inch of just here, you know. Oh.
Yeah, I misunderstood totally. But, yeah, so, you know, a lot of real special times, and you know, internationally as well, you know, whether it was for the World Championships and different things, that just, you know, being out there with the entire team, especially, like I said, team fighting with them, was definitely, you know, very memorable for me.
You know, Jackson, two things that involved Christine. One was her fight with Nikki Carlson at the Bluegrass Nationals, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But another one was the Vegas show, which I don't know if you've ever seen a tape of that.
I don't think I have.
You know, we were going to open up the show. So you're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you right now, okay? So I had Mike Chat and John Valera, and I had Christine and Richard Brandon. So I had to put somebody in the middle. So I'm saying, like, how can I get away with this, okay? So I said, you know what? I put Steve Babcock in the middle, okay? Okay, and so they started this thing off where Steve was going to start it off. Then the next two people, I think it was Mike Chat and John Valera, and Christine and Richard Brandon were on the ends because.
No, I think it was Pedro, wasn't it?
No, that was Hawaii.
Okay.
Okay. So it was Richard Brandon and Christine on the ends because I knew with the weapons they had, they might kill somebody. Okay. John and Mike Chat were in the next, and Steve was in the middle. So they stopped the music off, and Steve's doing punches and kicks and so forth. And then once everybody else goes, nobody was paying attention to Steve anymore. So it didn't really matter. You know what I mean?
He was like on a runway going out.
Yeah, he was, you know. And it was the funniest thing, but it was great. Everybody, there was 2,000 people there. They were uproaring, you know what I mean? Because it was such a great performance. And I got a picture. Mike Shad, John Valera, Richard Brandon, Christine. Where does Steve fit in here? You know what I mean? But Steve started it off, and he did a great job, I got to tell you, you know. But that was very memorable. That happened at Caesar's Palace, I think it was, you know. But her fight with Nikki Carlson was the one, because Nikki Carlson was nothing but a big version of her. She could kick, she was strong, she was big, she was a tough fighter, you know. And with Christine, it's all in here. Okay, I had to have it in her mind that she wins, otherwise, you know. So she ends up with a 2-1 lead. 2-1 lead. Okay? Somebody says 3 seconds left to the match. She tries to go in and score a point. Nikki Carlson scores a point. It's tied 2-2. I hit that stage with a hammer fist. Okay. And everybody scattered. Pedro, everybody, Mike Conroy, Pedro, they all took off. Okay. Get over here. I had a hold of her ankle. I'm telling you, the blood stopped going to her foot at that point. Okay? And I said, if you don't score this next point, I'm going to kill you. Do you understand? You could have heard a pin drop in the whole audience. You know what I mean? I think the judges were afraid not to score a point for her the next time she went up. You know? So sure enough, they said go. She ran out, bang. She hit Nikki Carlson, won the match. Thank God, otherwise she might not be here today. I'm going to tell you right now.
I wasn't the smartest fighter for a long time. I didn't want anyone to think I was afraid of anybody, and I always wanted to be aggressive. And so regardless if I was ahead or behind, I was always straightforward, you know. So he's like, why are you going in when you have 3 seconds, you know, in your head? I'm like, why not?
You know, another time, she's fighting Nicole Quest from who was also on the Atlantic team, Nicole Quest, and but she wasn't at the time. And I said to Chris, neither one of you were on the team.
No, it was before we were on teams.
Before you got on the Atlantic team. And she was fighting her for the grand, and she goes, yeah, because I don't know, you know, the last time I fought her, you know, she
I asked if I did fight her before. I couldn't let her before.
She wasn't sure. So I said, yeah, you fought her before. You beat her 5-3. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? I said, no. And so she goes in there, and they're fighting, and she beats Nicole Quest for the grand. You know what I mean? So after she comes out, I said, by the way, you lost to Nicole the last time.
I was like, are you kidding me?
but if I had told her she had lost, then it would have bothered her. You know what I mean? But when she feels like, yeah, I beat her before, so I should be able to beat her again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All psychological. You know.
We would go from the daytime to the nighttime show, you know, and in between go out to dinner and, you know, get a bite to eat and get ready for the nighttime finals. And I was asking him about this girl. He's like, yeah, you beat her before, so okay, let's just eat. I never blinked an eye about it, never worried about it. Got out there, fought her, beat her, and then he's like, you know, she kicked your butt last time. I'm like, thanks. So yeah, awesome. It's a lot, you know. I mean, yeah, you need the skills, and you know as well, you know, whether it's forms, weapons, whatever. I mean, you need the skills, you need to train, but when you get into the ring, well, that goes out, you know, it's there, but it's all upstairs, you know, it's all how you mentally prepare and see yourself winning or worrying about how bad you know, you could look at
and you know, Jackson, you know it yourself with the level that you're at right now. I mean, as I talked to you before, that you are not really competing against other competitors. You're competing against yourself. A lot of the judges look at you and say, well, I seen him look better than that. You know what I mean? Or something like that there. And they give the other person a higher score because of, even though you was better than them. You know what I'm saying? And we've seen that happen before with a lot of you guys. And that's the level that you're at. You know what I mean? For some strange reason, every time you go out, you still seem to be looking better than you did the last time. You know? So I mean, I gotta praise you for that. And we've had a few competitors come along the line, but you know, we have different eras. You know, way back then, it was Christine and Richard Brandon era, so to speak, and then came the Casey Mock era, so to speak, as far as women go. Then it came the Lauren Kearney era. Then it came the Caitlin Deshelle era, you know, then it come Mackenzie and Sammy Smith's era, you know what I mean? It's kind of like when it was Babe Ruth and then Joe DiMaggio and then Mickey Mantle and then, you know what I'm saying? And I compare the Yankees with us right along because each team had different stars at that time, just like we do. And that's what made Paul Mitchell team such a great team. And when they say the greatest team ever assembled, I don't say the greatest team ever assembled. I say the greatest team of all time, okay? Because I still feel that the Atlantic team, when they assembled that, it was an incredibly great team. Probably the greatest team they ever assembled all together at once. But their longevity was not there. They only lasted 4 years, you know what I mean? Where look at how long we've lasted. And we've had different eras come along, and a lot of the guys that were on that team ended up on the Paul Mitchell team anyways, you know what I mean? So, you know what, as a coach, I'm the luckiest coach in the world to have people like you people, Christine, yourself, and everybody else that have been on our team, that I had the privilege to be able to give some of my wisdom to them, or some of the advice I have, instead of saying that, some of the advice. And I just hope that it helps out you guys. And you guys have done an incredible job, and I'm very, very fortunate over all these years to have such great people to work with. You know.
Thank you very much, Coach. That means so much to me, and I'm sure any of our team members that are tuning in, it means a lot to them as well. A lot to unpack here, right? So I want to go ahead and review some of this. And you talk about the longevity, and I think a lot of that longevity comes from in the NFL and the NBA. We talk about how there's different types of coaches. Like there's motivating coaches, and then there's strategic coaches. They're the coaches that get the most out of the players, and there's the coaches that get the most out of the plays, right? And that's one thing that I think is so impressive about what you've done with Paul Mitchell, is that you've always had both. Like you have, like when you grabbed Christine by the ankle and said, "You better not," right? And then there's also, and we won't say who this was, but there's another story that you've told in the team meetings where we were in the team fights and we were up 10 going into the last fight, and you tell our fighter, "If you lose 10 points, don't you dare come back to this side of the ring," right? And so there's the motivation side. But then
you know who that fighter was?
Who was it?
Mike Conroy.
Okay, yeah.
Mike Conroy. I said, if he scores 11 points on you, don't come back to the corner. I'm going to tell you right now.
But it's that competitive spirit that has allowed the longevity of the team, and a lot of the success of the team is due to your understanding of the game and your understanding of the judges, thinking to bring a stopwatch, right? And just all of the little things, all those little details. And then obviously in that same conversation, we talked about Miss Christine, obviously some incredible wins on your part, wins over other all-time great female competitors, competing against the men, just so many great stories from your competitive career. And then one thing that you mentioned that really resonated with me was how some of your favorite memories on the team had nothing to do with karate. It was after the tournament was over, or when we're going to teach a seminar or do a show or whatever. And the same thing is true for me. Like I look back, the last Cayman Islands trip that Paul Mitchell did, I was on that trip, and I remember some of the best memories of that trip were Cass Sigmund and I. We did this charter boat to go out to Stingray City and pet all the stingrays and everything, right? And you could swim with them and all that. And on the boat there was like a scuba session or like a snorkeling session. And the captain of the boat brought up like a fresh conch, like the, shellfish, like a conch out of the water. And then, took the fish out of the conch and slapped it on the table and chopped it up and put it in salsa. And everybody else was like terrified to eat it because it was like this thing that just came out of the water. Cass Sigmund and I finished the entire tub of salsa for the rest of the boat that whole trip back. and there's so many other little things over the years, and so many of those memories are about the family, not about being on the karate team, and it's about the family and the moments that we shared together and the relationships that we created, and that's another thing that I feel like makes it so special. But getting back to Ms. Christine, some of your competitive success, you were also able to leverage that into success in many other fields, most notably being able to penetrate the performance industry and become an actress and a stunt woman, and featured in Batman and Robin as Batgirl, and then WMAC Masters, which it seems like it's everybody's favorite show from back in the day because of how many cool martial artists were in it, right? So just tell us a little bit about that. Kind of at what point in your martial arts career did you make that transition, and how did it come about? And just tell us about those opportunities.
Well, the first opportunity I had was stunt doubling for Hilary Swank in the next Karate Kid movie, and that was being filmed in Boston, in Massachusetts. And Pat Johnson, who, was dear friends of ours, and, we had known him for years, and we were very friendly with him, and I had never said, hey, if you see a movie part, I'd love to be in it. I never said anything like that to him. We were just very good friends, and he went around to the tournaments, and, he knew the level of competition that I had and that I was at. And, he just ended up hiring me to do that in Massachusetts, and it just happened to be they had a stunt woman that was doing all the doubling, and she did all the stunts, like with the car and the ladder and all different stunts, and she did a great job. But when it came to martial arts, you know, she had said she knew martial arts, but she was probably, you know, maybe a year or two's experience, you know. And so he said, you know, this is the main part of the movie is the fighting, you know, the fight scene at the end, and I need the best female out there. And, you know, so he called me and asked me if I would, you know, do the work. And, you know, after doing that job, I fell in love with it. I was like, you know, I felt like a white belt again. I'm like, I don't know, how do I do this? How do I do that? What is this person on the set? What's that person? And how do you do camera angles? And, you know, I just felt like a white belt starting all over again and you know, being a beginner. So, you know, it went from that to WMAC Masters. And then, so the Karate Kid was in '93. So, and, you know, got my side card back then. And then it was 93, right?
It was 93, yeah. And then you ended up, you know, doing the WMAC Masters, yeah. And that's when you got a call about the Batman.
Yeah, and then I got a call to double for Alicia Silverstone and Batman and Robin, and that was great. And, you know, I've done, you know, movie with Don Wilson and, well, couple, and, you know, it's doing different stunt work on other movies that had nothing to do with martial arts, you know, like Underdog, and actually did some stunts a week and a half ago on a movie. So that was interesting because I was working with a bunch of 20-year-old guys and getting slammed around. I'm like, okay, but yeah, I still enjoy doing it. I'm not gonna, you know, drop my school and everything, you know, to do just stunt work. You know, school's very important to me, and running a business and a tournament, and, you know, having a family and stuff. But if I can do some stunt work, you know, here and there, it's a lot of fun. So
I'm going to intercept a little bit, okay? Because two things real quick. Probably I think 1990, right around that time. She's at the Battle of Atlanta. And she calls me on the phone, and she says, yeah, you know, I was just, this guy came up to me, and he said he wanted to talk to me and stuff, and he gave me this card. He says, but I was, you know, had to go to, I was getting ready for the Grands and so forth and so on. So he said, you know, I kind of blew him off and stuff. So I said, so who is he? She goes, his name is Pat Johnson. I said, go find him right now. Go find him right now. Okay, that's what I said. Okay, that was one. Second one is we would just got through doing the Ocean State. We were laying in bed. We were tired. She gets this phone call. Oh, hi, how you doing? So forth. We're laying down. I'm laying down. She's talking. Yeah, well, you know, I got my classes going on and stuff and so forth. But thanks, anyways. Maybe I'll try to get up there. You know. And she hangs up. I said, who's that? That was Pat Johnson. Really? What did he want? Well, he's filming the Karate Kid movie in Massachusetts. He wanted to know if I could, if I can come up there. I said, give me that phone right now. So we called him up, of course. So much for the classes, I'll get them covered. We got to go up there, you know. And I'll never forget when he introduced her to Jerry Weintraub, who was the producer, right? Yeah, Jerry Weintraub was the producer. And Pat Johnson says, Jerry, this is the guy, this is the woman I was telling you about. She's the best martial artist in the world. That's how he told her, you know what I mean? And of course, I had this booklet out of all the things that she did and so forth and so on. And before you know it, some of the actors and stuff that were there wanted her autograph, okay? Because she was a star in her own sense, you know what I'm saying? But it was a really good experience, and you and Hillary got along really well, you know what I mean? Really good, you know, so that's what started her off on this whole thing, you know? But
it's been a lot of fun. Definitely, you know, I had the chance to work with Cheryl Wheeler on Batman and Robin. She was the one that doubled for Uma, and may she rest in peace as well. It's, you know,
that's such a sad thing.
Yeah, so we became very good friends after that. And, met a lot of great people through the industry, and it's a lot of fun. And between that and the karate school and our tournament, and I have my own little team that I coach with Team Macho, and trying to keep track of all the kids on the team. And of course, it's just it's martial arts all the time. It's in one way or another. It's all revolves around the martial arts.
Absolutely. And that work in the stunt industry is so important to what we do, because so many people start martial arts because they see a cool fight scene in a movie, they watch The Karate Kid, or they watch, a superhero beating up a bad guy. And that's why they start learning martial arts. And so in a way, the entertainment industry is what keeps martial arts alive, because that's what keeps a significant percentage of students coming into the doors of the schools and wanting to learn. And so going on to some of the other things that you kind of leverage your success from your competitive career and got other opportunities. You mentioned that you're the coach of Team Macho with some really talented team members, Cody and Michael Molina, Gavin Richmond. There's just so many great young talented competitors that you guys are bringing up through that team. And you also work in product design for Macho and kind of help them with equipment and figuring out what they need to do with some of their gear and things of that nature. So just tell us a bit about that and kind of how that relationship started and what you currently do.
Again, we seem to, have longevity with our relationships with people in companies. And I think it was back in, I was the top female competitor or fighter at the time. Yeah, that was at the year. No, that wasn't the year.
91, you won 3 gold medals.
I think 92 and 93, I went 13 months without losing and winning every grand at every NASCAR tournament. So it was like a 13-month span. But back in 90, they had asked me about doing a photo shoot and, maybe being on their cover or something. They had some new gear coming out. And so I did a photo shoot. It was actually on the beach, and the gear was called Splash. So it had like a splash of color on it. And we were doing photo shoot on the beach and stuff. And from that moment on, I've been, working with them as far as coming out with CBR products. I, designed a chest guard and the face shield, for competitors. And just, it's been a great relationship. We kind of had a Team Macho years ago that wasn't really a competitive team, but it was more like, with their products. And it was me and Herb Perez and Rich Brandon and we had our group of competitors with Pedro on that at that time.
Yeah, we had a bunch of our.
Yeah, we had a nice little group back then, and Herb and myself. Well, Herb used to run a camp for them, which was called the gold medal camp, because he won a gold medal in Taekwondo at the Olympics. So, and I used to run a little sport karate at his camp. And along with Mike Chat and Pedro, and we did the sport karate side. So
Gabe Renaga was in there.
And Gabe Renaga was there, and so then it's just been doing photo shoots with them and coming up with products and stuff. And in the last couple of years, it's been like 5 years, I think. I decided to come out with let's do a team. I'm out at these tournaments all the time anyway, and I see some great competitors and. We've been doing the team for quite a while, and the kids are great. It's great to be on the other side and see what he goes through coaching and stuff. And, but they're all great competitors, and biggest thing is that they're great people. And I kind of take that from him as well as, you want to have good people on the team, not just, you could have the most talented fighter or bumps competitor, but if they have an attitude, they are the worst loser if they do lose, or if their parents are, sometimes you have to look at the whole family, because when you're dealing with a kid, you're marrying the family too, that they come along as a package, and, so you get some great competitors out there, and sometimes, the parents can be, just the soccer mom, or, just
a pain in the butt, Yeah. So, my motto has always been as a coach, there's only one person that can have an attitude on this team, and you're looking at him. That's it. It's the only one, okay? let me be the good guy or the bad guy or whatever. You just shut up, do what you're supposed to do, and I'll take care of the rest. You know what I mean? But I'm the only one that can have an attitude. That's it. You know, that was my motto. You know.
And we have, Riker's on the team. Tyler is on his, Mitchell team. He's not competing anymore, but so we have a lot of commonalities there and stuff.
Listen, and when she's judging sometimes, and some of her people are competing, and I'd be over there judging, helping them too. You know what I mean? Because they're still a part of what we do. You know what I mean? But she does have some really, really good kids there, really good families too. You know what I mean? That's the main thing.
And, I kind of look at with the whole, being promoter and stuff. I mean, for the longest time, we were both traveling a lot because I was competing, he was coaching. Then once I decided to retire and I was doing film work and stuff, I didn't go as often, but I did. And then, was holding down the school. We had a huge school at the time, and, it was crazy. And then I had kids. So then he went to all the NASCAR tournaments and traveled with the team everywhere and stuff. And, as my kids got older and Dante started to compete, well, both of them competed, I started to get back out there again. And now I'm out there judging a lot now. So I'm seeing that end as far as being one of the judges and promoters. And
you know what, Jackson, don't tell her, but you know what, you never know, I might be stealing some competitors from her in the future. You never know. No, the kids are great and they keep working hard. That's the main thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you mentioned, Ms. Christine, you bring up, being a promoter and obviously, Coach, you talk about how you guys, work as a team on a lot of things and help each other out. And you guys work as a great team to promote the Ocean State Grand Nationals and have done that for a long time. Obviously, with everything going on this year, you guys had to host a virtual event and weren't able to do it in person and all that. And we're going to get to kind of what you see for the future of Ocean State Grand Nationals because I know you guys will be back and better than ever. But before we get into that, just tell us about, how did you get into tournament promoting in the first place and maybe, one or two just special memories from the Ocean States over the years, because that is such a historic event.
Well, I'll give you something that a lot of people don't know. The first year I ever ran the tournament, it was called the Don Rodrigues Karate Academy, the Don Rodrigues Karate Championships. That was the first year. The second year is when I started Ocean State Karate Championships, and then it turned into the Grand Nationals. But, it's built. It's been built over the years. We went from a small tournament to begin with. I think I had 150 competitors, but I only had 23 divisions. You know what I mean? So then it built and built, and before you know it, I was getting 500-600 people, which I got this crazy idea of going to a national championship, which was stupid. But nonetheless, it bigger and bigger, and then we got to bigger facilities, and then bigger trophies and more things. I remember one year we gave out bikes to all the junior winners, and bikes.
The largest trophy in the world.
Yeah, we made the largest trophy in the world, which was 34 feet high. Believe it or not, we had to tie it off in this building. You didn't even know it was a trophy. You thought it was part of the structure. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, we've had some crazy things happen there. So many celebrities came to our tournament over the years. And we've had Chuck Norris there a couple of times, and Don Wilson and Bill Wallace, and Cynthia Rothrock. We were going to have Chuck Zito this coming past year. Chuck's a very good friend of mine, both of us for that matter. But you know what? We've had Bruce Lee's daughter here, Shannon Lee. And you know what? We were fortunate to get celebrities here. We always like having a celebrity connection, bringing them in, having people meet them and stuff like that there and so forth. So we always like keeping that going. But our signature thing is the trophies we give to the underbelts, which are 7 feet tall. We give out 7-foot trophies to the underbelts, and that came about one year when we were at a NASCAR meeting, and everybody was talking about downsizing to a 5-foot trophy. I said, why are we doing that? Well, we can save some money and stuff. I said, well, are we going to be charging less now that we're giving less? No. So you know what? That's when I got in this mind. You know what? Instead of downsizing, I'm going to go up. So that's when I went up to 7-foot trophies instead. So as you can see, I haven't been always the most popular person in that group, But nonetheless, you had mentioned back along about the evolution of, I can't tell you how the evolution has come along over the years, and it's because of people like you, Jackson. You know what I mean? You've raised the bar. You brought it to this point where everybody's going to try to be better than Jackson Rudolph or as good as Jackson Rudolph. And I can't tell you what that does to our base, what it does to our competitors out there, working hard to try to get to your level. You know what I mean? And that's been going on for years. It happened when Christine was doing it. It happened when Casey Marks or Caitlin Deshelle, and also now, with Sammy and, and so forth. It's really, you guys keep it at that level. You and Reed and all the other guys that go out there and compete. I mean, yous are the ones that actually raise the bar and raise the sport up here. And I can't tell you or where our sport came from and where it's gone. It really has. And over the years, I've always had some old timers come to the tournament, and them would look at it and say, wow, that's all I can say. You know what I mean? And they just look at it, they're amazed by it. You know what I mean? So that's an incredible thing. There is ways of us propelling this into another area. You know what I mean? And I think we might be on the verge of doing something like that there within the next year or two. We've got some ideas, and NASCAR's been together. We've been talking on Zoom. Believe it or not, I'm almost a geek now. I know how to turn a computer on. I did a class this morning, and nobody helped me. I got on, and I was able to get in there with my black belt to talk and teach them this morning. Now, I'm not quite at geek level. I'm more like a geek. I haven't got the geek level yet, you know what I mean? But I would have never known how to do that. But I teach on Zoom a lot. I teach a lot of my students that way. And it's made me a better instructor by being able to do that on Zoom, you know what I mean? So this pandemic in some ways has come in a positive manner because my instructors would have never known how to do this here. You know what I mean? I'm going to tell you that now. But they would have adapted. They would have adapted the same way I had to adapt, you know what I mean? But I can tell you this, when we do get out there, we have been having NASCAR meetings. We've coming up with some great ideas. And I think we're on the verge of actually propelling the sport into another level. And Christine was part of that thing. So she knows, I mean, it's not anything in stone yet, but a lot of positive things look like it's going to be coming about,
That's awesome. That's absolutely great to hear. And especially even here at Black Belt Magazine, we've got some stuff going on behind the scenes to try to help give sport karate a larger platform and try to make this the big successful sport that we all love and that we all think that it should be. So now I notice, Miss Christine, if you had any additional thoughts to that, and then kind of segue that into what are we looking at for 2021? Obviously, it's a little bit uncertain if we're going to be able to, when we're going to be able to come back to normal competition like we like, but maybe just an update on, what Ocean States is planning for 2021 as of now.
Yeah, I mean, we're always working on that next event, and we're really hoping that we can have it in person, and probably have a better scenario than most, because we do have a hotel and a venue that has a lot of separate rooms. So if this pandemic is still going on, but maybe on a decline, and but limiting numbers of people and stuff like that, we do have that advantage where we can use the separate rooms and be able to work around things. But let's hope this vaccine and everything else, and starts to we'll really see some progress by April, hopefully, and that the event can be, one of the first ones of 2021 and really kick off the year off, with a bang. And we had some great ideas. I mean, last year was supposed to be our 40th anniversary. Now it's going to be 2021. It's going to be our 40th anniversary, and a few of the NASCAR events were on their 40th. And these are tournaments that have been around forever, and for a long time. We were planning to have Chuck Zito in as our special guest last year, so he would be excited to come back and to be our guest this year. And we're just looking to get the event in person. Hope, and just really come up with some great ideas and some different surprises for the new year.
What I'm looking forward to is seeing our guys. I miss the Paul Mitchell people. I really do. I really miss the team. I just can't wait to hug everybody. You know what I mean? I really can't wait for that to happen. So I'm giving you a big hug now, Jackson. I just want you to know that.
Thank you, Coach.
And you know what? I got to tell you that, a lot of people have some negative things about NASCAR, but I'm going to tell you this that a lot of people aren't aware of. We have 8 tournaments on our circuit that have had 40 years or more experience running tournaments. So when you think collectively, with all of these tournaments collectively, you know what I mean? We're talking about hundreds of years of experience there, you know what I mean? And you know what? For the first time in a long time, I feel like we're more together now than we've ever been before. You know what I mean? So we can all get on the same page and think as a group instead of individually. And I think that's what's happening right now. What can we do this as a group? What can we make? How can we make this better? Mm-hmm. It's going to be a very positive thing for the sport and for all the competitors in it, and for the future of where we're going.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that any fan of sport karate would share that same sentiment that I have, which is I really, really hope that we're able to get back to the in-person events. I hadn't thought about the fact that you guys have the multiple rooms, so that maybe primes you to be able to come back before other tournaments may be able to, which is awesome. And I highly recommend anybody tuning into this, whether you live up in the Northeast or you're from somewhere else in the country or up in Canada, what have you, if the Ocean States happens in 2021, make the trip because it's absolutely worth it. It's a historic event. I have so many great memories of competing there. Like Coach and Christine both just mentioned, they bring in movie stars and everything else for you guys to get to meet and interact with. And obviously, the whole Paul Mitchell team is going to be there and everything else. So highly, highly recommend the Ocean State Grand Nationals. Stay tuned. Any updates as far as date announcements, things like that, that will all be coming through the Black Belt Magazine page. So make sure that you guys are stay tuned to that to get all the updates about upcoming sport karate tournaments, and especially the Ocean State Grand Nationals. And so we've covered kind of, what you see about the progression of the sport. We know that there are some great things coming. One little aside that I want to add real quick, Coach Rodrigues talks about wanting to see all the team members and give them all a hug. I don't think he realizes how trademarked that is. Like I mentioned, how one of the things that people look forward to about getting on Paul Mitchell is hearing Coach's stories, but getting the first hug that you get from Coach after you get on the team, that's also a big deal because it's and also he gives great hugs, you know what I mean? So it was one of those things that I always look forward to because he has so much love, and I'm speaking to the audience here. He has so much love for every single one of his team members, and he shows it. And it's one of the things that you look forward to most about getting on the team is the fact that you know that you'll be part of a family the minute that you get on the team. And I could talk about what it means to be on Paul Mitchell for hours and hours. We won't do that. So we've discussed all the topics that I wanted to get to. Thank you both so much. This has been so informative. Are there any closing thoughts or kind of send-off messages that either of you want to give to our audience here at Black Belt Magazine?
Yes, Jackson, I can't tell you how proud I am of you and what you're doing right now. I really am very proud of you, not just as a competitor. You're one of the greatest competitors that I've ever competed, but you've also turned into quite a young man, and I'm very, very proud of you. And I just want you to know I love you very much, just like I love all the other people too, but on the Paul Mitchell team, but the love is there for you. I want you to know.
I love you too, Coach. Thank you. That means so much to me. Thank you. That's all I can say. Love you too, Coach.
Yeah, well, same here, Jackson. You continue the great work that you're doing. You're doing terrific.
Yes, you are. Yeah, I'm following a lot of the stuff that you've been doing, and I love it. Great stuff.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I did not anticipate the send-off message being a thank you to me, but thank you both very much. That means a lot to me, especially coming from the two of you. And also, just thank you for everything that you've been able to share on the show today. I think that this is so many important topics from sport karate history, whether it's with the Paul Mitchell team or your competitive career, Miss Christine, or so everything in between. So much great information. I highly encourage anybody that's tuning into the stream now that didn't catch the content from the beginning, make sure you rewind this podcast, go back and watch the whole thing, because there's tons of great stuff in store. And once again, I can't thank you, Coach and Christine, enough for this time. And if you guys have if the audience has any questions for them, feel free to go ahead, drop those in the comments. They're both on Facebook, so feel free to go ahead and tag them in the comments down below. And I'll also be in the comments to answer any questions that anybody might have. And we've got big things coming. This is episode 45, so I've got some big plans coming up for the 50th episode, and then episode 52, which will be the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. So stay tuned to all of the great things that are coming for the Jax Rudolph podcast. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in. None of this would be possible without you guys. And thank you to Black Belt Magazine for giving us this excellent platform to share sport karate with the greater martial arts community. One more time, thank you, Coach and Christine. And thank you to everybody that's tuning in.
Thank you, Jackson.
My pleasure.
So nice to you.
Thank you. So once again, I'm Jackson Rudolph. This has been the Jax Rudolph podcast, episode 45, and I'll see you next time.